Here's Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister keeps asking me if I will support his chaos. No! And I want to bring the Prime Minister back to one of our earlier exchanges in this House. On the 26th of May, I asked the Prime Minister if he'd ever used the words, "COVID is only killing 80-year-olds," or words to that effect. On that day, the Prime Minister pointedly didn't deny using those words. And now we have the proof that he did. We've all now seen the Prime Minister's text message. I quote, "The median age for COVID fatalities is 82. That is above life expectancy." And we have the Prime Minister's conclusion in the same text. So get COVID and live longer. Remind the Prime Minister, over 83,000 people aged 80 or over lost their lives to this virus. Everyone leaving behind a grieving family and loved ones. So will the Prime Minister now apologise for using those words?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, nothing I can say from this dispatch box or from this virtual dispatch box, I should say, or nothing I can do can make up for the loss and the suffering that people have endured throughout this pandemic. And there will, of course, be a public inquiry into what has happened. But I would just remind the right honourable gentleman, when he goes back over the decision-making processes that we had in those very, very difficult and dark times, that these are incredibly tough balancing decisions that you have to take. Again, you have to balance the catastrophe of the disease against the suffering that is caused by lockdowns, the impacts on mental health, the loss of life chances for young people, Mr. Speaker. And what has changed since we were thinking in those ways is, of course, that we have rolled out vaccines faster than any other country in Europe. 96%, Mr. Speaker, of people over 50 now have had a vaccine. 68% of people have had 2 jabs, Mr. Speaker. What we're trying to say to the country today, and I think the single most important serious message is, if you have not yet had your second jab, please come along and get it. And if you're over 50 and you still haven't had your second jab, or over 40, please come and get it as well. And never forget, Mr. Speaker, that if we'd followed the advice of the right honourable gentleman, we would have stayed in the European Medicines Agency and we would never have had the vaccine rollout at all.
Starmer.
Speaker, I think we might need to check that the line to checkers is working, because the Prime Minister's answers have no resemblance to the questions I'm actually asking him. He's given us a list of what he can't do. What he can do, quite straightforwardly, virtually or otherwise, is say sorry. The trouble is, Mr. Speaker, nobody believes a word the Prime Minister says anymore. He promised he had a plan for social care, but he's ducked it for 2 years. He promised not to raise tax. Now he's planning a jobs tax. He promised he wouldn't cut the army or the aid budget. He's cut both. And, Mr. Speaker, he also promised that Monday would be Freedom Day. He said 18 times from that dispatch box that it'd be irreversible. But the truth is, he's let a new variant into the country, he's let cases soar, and he's left us with the highest death toll in Europe, one of the worst hit economies of any major economy. Last week, 1 million kids were off school, businesses are closing, and millions will spend their summer self-isolating. But don't worry, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's got it all under control. Because this morning we read he's got a new 3-word slogan. Keep life moving. You couldn't make it up. Mr. Speaker, isn't it clear there's only 3 words this Prime Minister needs to focus on? Get a grip.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's look at the position now as it was at the end of last year. And as we come to the end of this parliamentary term, let's be absolutely clear that it is thanks to the vaccine rollout, which, by the way, as I never tire of repeating, would have been impossible if we'd followed his advice, that 9 million people have now come off furlough. Unemployment is 2 million lower than predicted. Job vacancies, Mr. Speaker, are 10% higher than they were before the pandemic began. Business insolvencies are lower than before the pandemic began. He wants 3-word slogans, Mr. Speaker. I'll give him a 3-word slogan. Our 3-word slogan is get a jab. And get a jab. And by the way, what we're also doing is help people to get a job. We're turning jabs, jabs, jabs into jobs, jobs, jobs. That's the agenda of this government. By taking sensible, cautious decisions, rolling out the vaccines in the way that we have, we have been able to get this country moving and to keep it moving. And I've listened to him very carefully this morning. I have absolutely no idea what he proposes to do instead, except keep us all in some sort of perpetual lockdown and limbo. He has no answer to the question of if not now, when. He has no plan, he has no ideas, and he has no hope, Mr. Speaker. And whilst we in this government are getting on with getting our country through the pandemic and delivering on the people's priorities.
Craig Williams.